Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get into this week's show. Friends, lovers, listeners, I'm not sure I ever would have predicted that I would be recording an episode like this just 2 days before Christmas. But this is a Monday mini episode, the first time I've ever recorded a Monday episode, because there's just some things that I feel I have to say. I just feel viscerally, passionately disappointed and angry at things that I'm seeing, and I suppose we can consider this a follow-up to the first episode of this season, which was about the patriarchy and the harm this is still causing to women. And there are two very different, very complex, glaring stories that are sweeping social media at the moment. And they are the stories of Giséle Pelicot and Lily Phillips. I mean, they couldn't be more different. And there is a glaring double standard across these two stories. What I am seeing from men is a disproportionate amount of outrage aimed at Lily Phillips. We're going to go into it a bit more in a second, but she is an OnlyFans creator whose personal decisions have, yes, ruffled some feathers online. However, meanwhile, and we will go into this too, the men involved in the Giséle Pelicot case who have committed acts of real aggressive harm are largely unscathed by public outrage from the male community. And that disparity is extremely telling and says a lot about where priorities to men currently lie. Now, for context, because I think that's important, Giséle Pelicot is a 72-year-old French woman, and she became the centre of a horrifying case of abuse that has shocked, I would presume, the world. For over a decade, her husband, Dominique Pelicot, orchestrated her repeated drugging and sexual assault by over 50 men. And he filmed these atrocities without her knowledge. And this abuse only came to light after Dominique's arrest for upskirting, which, as a friend actually reminded me today, was made illegal not that long ago. So if that hadn't happened, maybe he wouldn't have been arrested and maybe this abuse would still be continuing. And then investigators discovered the recordings of his wife being drugged and raped by multiple men. Now, Giséle made an unbelievably brave decision to waive her right to anonymity, and she has been determined to expose the horror that she has endured and to hold those abusers accountable. Now, just this past week, Dominique was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and 50 other men have also been convicted, receiving sentences ranging from 3 to 15 years. And this story has sparked very urgent conversations about systemic violence, consent, and justice, and it has highlighted the ongoing need for societal change. And her strength is not just inspiring, it is groundbreaking. And in a world where victims of abuse are often told to remain silent, she forced the world to confront the horrifying reality of abuse. It gives a voice to countless women who have been silenced by fear, by societal judgment, or by the overwhelming weight of shame that gets placed on their shoulders. As Giséle herself powerfully put it, shame must change sides. The shame that society has long placed on victims of abuse must be lifted and redirected where it truly belongs, on the perpetrators and on the systems that have enabled their actions. Giséle's refusal to be silent, her refusal to carry the burden of shame, challenges the very idea of who is responsible for the harm. She's given survivors the permission to reclaim their power, to shift the burden of shame, and to demand justice. Now, through this courage, Giséle has begun the long and difficult work of dismantling structures that have allowed male violence, exploitation, and abuse to go unchallenged. And every person who hears it, every person who continues to share this story is contributing to the breaking down of a system that has for far too long thrived on silence and subjugation of women. This is a fight that is not over. It's only just beginning. And men, why so quiet? Why am I not seeing outrage directed towards the men in this story? Because I am seeing a lot of male outrage directed elsewhere. So let's flip this coin and talk about Lily Phillips for a moment. So if you don't know, she has gained significant attention for her work in the adult content industry. You don't need me to tell you that I support sex workers. Obviously, I do. And I think it's important to remind anyone who has judgment towards sex workers, sex work exists because there is a demand for it. If there was no demand, there would be no sex workers. That doesn't mean you have to like it. That doesn't mean it has to be your thing. That is a fact. It wouldn't exist if there wasn't a demand for it. Now, Lily Phillips has recently faced very significant backlash on social media after sleeping with 100 men in a single day. A personal choice, and it has sparked widespread criticism and judgment. Now, as an OnlyFans creator, I'm sure Lily is no stranger to public scrutiny, but this revelation has definitely intensified, shall we say, the vitriol directed towards her. It has been used as an opportunity to shame her, to invoke moral judgments about her sexuality, her behaviour. And this serves as quite a powerful reminder that women are still not free to make choices about their own bodies without fear of judgment or retribution. Now, the stories of Giséle Pelicot and Lily Phillips should not even be comparable. But sadly, they are, because they both highlight how women are treated when they challenge societal expectations, and the public response from men reveals a major problem. Despite the absolute horror of the Giséle Pelicot case. So let's remind ourselves that over 50 men drugged and raped this woman, and it was filmed. Her husband, her friends, her neighbours, people she knew. These were fathers, doctors, teachers. Not the monsters that we are led to believe that rapists are. Very normal presenting people in what she perceived to be her very normal life. And I am seeing very little outrage from men surrounding this story. Very little outrage directed at the men who abused her, at the men who protected this, who let it go unreported. This absence of outrage toward abusers from men and the systems that enable them is a huge issue, as it allows the cycle of abuse to continue without being properly addressed. And maybe this wouldn't have been all that noticeable, because maybe outrage from men just isn't really in right now. But on the other hand, Lily Phillips is facing nothing but outrage and disgust. And that's all directed at her, not at the men who are involved in her decision, whether that's to sleep with 100 men in a day or 1,000 men in a day. We're not directing any of the disgust or the outrage towards the men. Again, it's all on her. So her decision to embrace her own sexual autonomy, yep, it challenges the narrow expectations placed on women's behaviour, and this backlash is a direct response to her assertion of control over her own body and sexuality. But this is so deeply troubling at how misdirected all of this outrage is. While Lily is being criticised for her own consenting sexual choices, the men who were drugging and raping a woman are barely being scrutinised. Surely the focus at the moment should be on holding those men accountable for their actions, not punishing women for asserting their own autonomy. And this misdirection allows real harm to go unchallenged. Now, men, I hope you know at this point, I hold a lot of space on this podcast for us all to listen and work together. Because I don't believe that division is the way to go. I don't believe fighting each other is the way to go. We all need to listen and work together. We need to listen and work as a team. But please, for goodness sake, we need you to do better. Stop blaming women for their own consenting actions. Stop hating women for their own consenting actions. Start blaming the men out there who are raping, who are committing sexual violence. Where is the hate directed at them? Where is the accountability directed at them? And whenever these issues of male violence or systemic misogyny come up, there's this inevitable chorus of not all men. And saying not all men is not helpful. In fact, it's actively harmful. It shifts the focus away from the issue at hand, which is violence against women. And it centers the conversation on men's egos. It's like interrupting a fire safety lecture to just say, well, not all people are arsonists. Sure, we get it. Not all men are perpetrators. But enough men are that we even need to have this conversation in the first place. Thank you for clarifying that you personally are not someone who is going to drug and rape your wife and recruit 50 of your friends to participate. Thank you. Thank you, because I wasn't sure. So thank you so much for letting us know, not all men. In fact, you don't need to clear up for us that you're not a rapist if you're not a rapist. Because how do you think at a time like this, saying not all men is helpful when the men involved in this case are husbands, neighbours, friends? The men causing harm aren't strangers. They are the people we interact with every day. It's not enough to distance ourselves from the problem by claiming it's not all men. When we say men, we are talking about the broader culture of male violence and complicity. It's not about individual guilt or defensiveness. It's about collective responsibility. The not all men defense derails important discussions and silences survivors, because instead of using energy to argue your own personal innocence, you could use that same energy to challenge the systems and behaviours that allow these atrocities to continue. And that brings us back to Lily Phillips, because why are men so quick to act as the moral police for her own personal choices, but silent when it comes to holding men accountable in cases like the Giséle Pelicot one? The world doesn't need men to be the moral conscience of women. Women are perfectly capable of navigating their own decisions. What the world desperately needs is for men to step up and be the moral conscience of other men. Because why is it that so many men seem more outraged by what women are doing to themselves, whether it's their outfits, their careers, or their life choices, than by what men are doing to women? And that answer lies in control. Since the beginning of the fucking earth, society has been obsessed with policing women's behaviour because it's easier to critique and control women than to confront the harsh realities of male violence and real systemic harm. So this outrage isn't really about morality, it's about distraction. If you focus on women's choices, it allows men to avoid the harder, more uncomfortable work of holding other men accountable for abuse, violence, exploitation, and anything that contributes to it. So it's time to stop fixating on women's autonomy and start addressing the real harm, what men are doing to women. When men critique Lily Phillips, it's just performative outrage. Sure, it's loud, it's public, but ultimately it's harmless to the status quo. But calling out the men in the Pelicot case, that requires real work. It means confronting uncomfortable truths about how violence is normalised in male spaces. It means disrupting the boys will be boys narrative that excuses harmful behaviour. It's much easier to criticise a woman's OnlyFans content than to address systemic misogyny, abuse, and violence within male-dominated institutions. And this is a problem with real consequences, because when men focus their energy on shaming women, it distracts from the urgent need to tackle male violence. And make no mistake, male violence isn't just a women's issue, it's a societal issue. Men are the primary perpetrators of violence, not just against women, but also against other men. So addressing violence benefits everyone. So instead of just saying not all men, you can actively make a difference by calling out harmful behaviour when you see it. Whether that's in your circle of friends, at work, online, If you hear someone making inappropriate comments, don't stay silent, challenge them. Don't let toxic masculinity slide or make excuses for it. You can also educate yourself and the people around you about consent, respect, and healthy relationships. Listen to women when they speak out and believe them when they share their experiences. Support survivors in real, tangible ways. It's not just about offering sympathy, it's about standing up and being part of the change. Hold each other accountable. Whether it's confronting a friend making jokes about abuse or demanding better from institutions that protect abusers. Don't just be a bystander. Be part of dismantling the systems that allow this harm to thrive. Take action and stop relying on the excuse of not all men, because the work starts with you. By shifting the focus to hold other men accountable, we start to dismantle the culture that allows cases like Giséle Pelicot's to happen in the first place. And that means having hard conversations with your friends, calling out harmful behaviour, and refusing to stay silent in the face of misogyny. I see men be so quick to call Lily Phillips' actions fatherless behaviour, but zero at the men in the Giséle Pelicot case who actually caused harm. So, let me get this right. Lily is shamed for making personal consensual choices about her body, choices that have nothing to do with anyone else. Like, it doesn't affect you at all unless you are one of the men actively having sex with her. It doesn't affect you at all. Whether she'll regret it later in life, literally none of your business. While the men who committed abuse, I don't see them face any such judgment. What about their fathers? Why is it fatherless behaviour that Lily Phillips has chosen to be an OnlyFans creator, but not fatherless behaviour of these men who rape? Where are their dads? Did they not teach their sons not to commit sexual violence towards women? Some of these men who committed the rape are dads. So are you saying that if one of their daughters goes on to become an OnlyFans creator, we can go fatherless behaviour because we all know her dad was awful? What does this have to do with anything? What is this fatherless behaviour that I constantly see called out? And I just want to know why when men rape and assault women, why is that not fatherless behaviour? Why did their dads not teach them not to rape women? That's something I would really love to know an answer for. It's such a double standard, and it continues to reflect how deep-rooted misogyny is in our society. The core of this issue is such a fundamental question. Why do we as a society place such intense scrutiny on women's behaviour while excusing or ignoring men's? And that answer lies in a patriarchal system that values control over women more than it does accountability for men. And that doesn't just harm women. It traps men in narrow definitions of masculinity that prize dominance over empathy and silence over action. Imagine if the same energy being used to critique Lily Phillips' OnlyFans account was instead directed at dismantling the systems that enable violence against women. Imagine if the social media call-outs, the moral outrage, were channeled into holding the men in the Giséle Pelicot case accountable. The difference would be monumental. So men, I ask you, the next time you are tempted to police a woman's choices, stop and ask yourself, am I doing this because it's easier than addressing real issues? Then take that energy and redirect it. Educate yourself. Support survivors. Call out toxic behaviour, even if it's uncomfortable. And most importantly, hold other men accountable, because if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. And this outrage over Lily Phillips versus the near silence around Giséle Pelicot is just a clear example of how our society prioritizes performative morality over meaningful action. And it's time to flip that script. Women don't need men to save them or lecture them. They need men to step up and challenge the systems that perpetuate harm. And I know that anyone who follows me on social media might already be sick to death of me talking about this, but I don't care. I feel really passionately about this, and I think a lot of other people should too, because we cannot justifiably live in a society where there is more disgust shown from men towards a woman who consents than there is towards other men who rape. If it supposedly comes from a place of care towards women, because you're so worried and so concerned that Lily Phillips might ruin her own life, why aren't you worried about the men who ruin women's lives by raping them? Because Lily Phillips' hypothetical regrets later in life are not your problem. And what scares me the most about this situation is, best case scenario, it's ignorance. And the worst case scenario is that this still all comes down to attitudes of control. Because a woman who feels empowered to do what she wants with her body, that's not a woman who is easy to control. But a trusting, unconscious wife, that's a different story. So do you care about women or not? What side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to hate women, or do you want to hate the men who harm them? Are you part of the solution, or are you part of the problem? Friends, lovers, listeners, it's not what I wanted to talk about 2 days before Christmas, and obviously I am wishing all of my listeners a very happy holiday season, but this has been glaring me in the face the past few days. I wanted to air my thoughts. I don't want there to be division, but sometimes we need to stand up and say we need your help. And if I see a transphobic attack, I, as a cisgender human, don't feel the need to say not all cisgenders. My go-to is to make sure that community are doing okay. Ask what I can do to be a better ally, to know what I can do to better support them, to see where I can call out transphobic behaviours as much as I can. And men, that's what we need from you. We don't need not all men. We need you to listen. We need you to support, and we need you to help, because there can't be change without it. I hope you have a lovely Christmas, and I will see you in the new year. For now, thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love, Peach.